Hello, everyone. I'm Krista Moore, and welcome to the Krista Moore Talk Show. This is brought to you by K Coaching and ID Growth. This talk show format is a new way to learn from industry experts and thought leaders as they share their growth ideas and their success stories. I have the pleasure today of interviewing Stan Phelps. Now, Stan is the founder of the purplegoldfish.com, and it's a think tank here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Stan is a TEDx speaker, he's a Forbes contributor, and an author of 6 books. So I'd like to welcome Stan to our show today. Hi, Stan, are you there?
Yeah. Hi, Krista. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to see you. So I'm going to ask you, if you would please, to just tell our audience a little bit about yourself. We'll just start out getting to know you a little bit.
Sure. So I'm an author, a keynote speaker, and workshop facilitator, and I have 25 years of kind of background in marketing, having started out on the agency side with a group called IMG. Then I went to the brand side and worked with Adidas, spent some time with the PGA of America, and lastly finished out my career before transitioning with an agency called Synergy. And I founded Purple Goldfish back in 2012, really with a focus on how to help businesses drive differentiation, increase loyalty, and promote positive word of mouth.
Yeah, actually, we met, I think about 2 or 3 months ago. I heard you speak at a Key 5 speaking event, and I really enjoyed your topic, and that's why I wanted to have you as my guest today, because I thought that our audience would really appreciate it as well. So I know your company is the goldfish, the purple goldfish, but you have all these other colors, and I just have to ask, like, what's up with the fish?
What's up with the fish and the colors? So the red goldfish was actually the 5th color in the 6th book, the red goldfish. And well, first I'll start out with the goldfish. You know, the goldfish represents something small, and the idea that little things can truly make the biggest difference. You know, the inspiration behind goldfish came from a company called Kimpton Hotels. And so if you never stayed at a Kimpton property before, you know, they really get the idea of the customer experience. So there's always gourmet coffee for free in the lobby. They do fresh fruit. In the afternoon, they do wine tasting. They're super pet friendly. But here's one of the things I love. Maybe you're staying at a Kimpton property, you're getting a little lonely. These guys will give you a pet goldfish for your stay. And it's a program that they call Guppy Love.
Guppy Love. All right.
Yeah.
Now you have a blue, I believe, that is aligned to technology. Is that right?
Yeah. So just real quick, the first 3 books in the series were purple, green, and gold, and those were in reference to Mardi Gras in New Orleans, because there's one word that comes from New Orleans that kind of embodies the idea of doing the little extra, and that word is called lagniappe. And lagniappe means a little bit more or a little extra. The blue goldfish, which was the 4th color, Krista, that was inspired, it was all about technology, data, and analytics. And that was inspired by a Danish king from the 10th century. And his nickname was Bluetooth. And it really represents convergence and how to leverage technology, data, and analytics.
And I understand the latest book is the red. So tell me where that inspiration comes from for a minute, and what are some of the key elements in the red goldfish?
Yeah, so red, believe it or not, was inspired by a rock band. And the rock band is U2, and their lead singer is Bono. And back in 2006, Bono created a thing with Bobby Shriver called the Red Campaign. And with the Red Campaign, that was all about partnering with for-profit businesses and creating a specific line of product that was red. And the idea, a portion of those proceeds would go to charity. And in the case of Bono, he was pretty passionate about Africa. And over the last 10 years, that program has raised over $360 million. And so red really represents, it's an ode to the red campaign, but it's about doing that little extra to embrace purpose in business.
Yeah, and I'm noticing you have a red sweater on. I don't know if there's any correlation to that.
Sure, and I got the red goldfish working as well.
Okay, there you go. So something about this whole red goldfish philosophy that really kind of grabbed me was how you related it to how business is evolving. And there's this evolution of business going on, and it's getting to a point where being a for-purpose business is really a differentiator and leading many companies to great success. So I'm hopeful for you to talk through maybe this evolution a little bit so that our audience can better understand it and maybe be thinking about, well, where am I in this evolution?
In this evolution, yeah, great. So I call this idea of purpose, putting purpose first, the 4.0 version of business. So we've got to go all the way back to the 1.0 version. And the 1.0 version of business in terms of focus was all about putting the shareholder first. And that the true purpose of business was simply to maximize return for the shareholders. So everything that you did was primarily about chasing profit. And that was the 1.0 version. And that was predominant in the 60s and the 70s and even into the early 80s. Kind of this, probably at the end of it, it was the greed is good era. The 2.0 version was a little more enlightened, I believe. That put the customer first. And the idea that the purpose of being in business is solely about getting and keeping customers. And that if you do that right, and you've got satisfied customers that come back, that kind of the profit thing would actually take care of itself. The 3.0 version, which is probably came out in the 2000s, really put more of an emphasis on culture and putting the employee first. And that the idea that if you put the employee first and you had engaged employees, they would create a great experience for your customers. Mm-hmm. But the 4.0 version, I think, is even a little more involved than employee first, and that's putting purpose at the heart of everything that you do.
When I hear that evolution, I'm thinking of many of the businesses that are part of our audience today, and if they were writing down where they believed they were in that evolution, I think there's plenty that are maybe still at the 2.0 level, thinking about that customers are always first and wishing that maybe their company would be thinking about employees being first. But I've seen this evolution over time, and maybe even more so in the past few years, when Simon Sinek came out with his TED Talk that became very popular. And why don't you speak to that for a moment, because that was really more about the why you do things. And it sounds like that really aligns to this concept of 4.0 and for-purpose businesses. So tell me a little bit about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so great. And if, I think Start With Why now is the most watched TED Talk of all time. I know it was in the top two, I think, two or three. But what Simon really challenged, people to think is the idea that as people, we don't buy what people do or even how they do it. We buy as customers and employees why they do what they do. And it really has put purpose at the forefront of thinking. And what's interesting, I think business is really evolved in general, because we would, typically 10, 20 years ago, there were only two types of business. There were for-profit businesses and there were not-for-profit or nonprofits. And that was really a binary point of view. And I think you had to choose whether it was profit or purpose. Now I think we're developing into a time where people can, instead of the or, we need to embrace the and. You can be a both for-profit and embrace purpose is what you do.
Yeah. And I heard during your talk something significant about the year 2020, which really is not that far away. It seems like it's very futuristic, but where
Right.
You're saying that purpose will be the ultimate differentiator in business. So what is the significance of the year 2020?
Yeah, the year 2020 is not only when we're going to be in the next election cycle, which is scary to think of. It's just 3 years away. But 2020 happens to be when we will cross over and millennials will make up 51% of the workforce. And if you want something that's even more scary, by 2025, millennials will make up 75% of the workforce. And so you're talking about a group that views business differently. They have much different views in terms of what they expect from the employers that they work for and the businesses that they frequent. This is a generation that grew up with social media. They expect, businesses to be transparent, and they just have a greater, I think, appreciation for purpose. And so I think by 2020, a lot of people are talking about it. Purpose is going to become one of the main drivers and ultimate differentiators in business.
Yeah, those are some great points. Something that I don't think we typically think about, but those millennials, when we look at what those high percentages are, those are our employees, those are our customers, and that certainly needs to drive change amongst how we're going to market. So yeah, I'd like you to maybe tell us about one or two purpose-driven companies as an example, that how they are different and that has led to their success.
Sure. So one of them I like is really, I think, has been one of the leaders in this movement, and that's Patagonia. And Patagonia, an apparel company, founded all the way back in the 1960s, really has understood that their purpose is about the environment and trying to create a more sustainable world. And so when we talk about this idea of the red goldfish, is how do you do little things that kind of bring that purpose to life? And so an example of that for Patagonia, they have a program for their employees called Green Sabbaticals. And if you're an employee of Patagonia, you get up to 2 months of paid work leave where you get to go and volunteer for a nonprofit that is all about their mission. It has to be an environmental nonprofit that helps kind of advocates for sustainability and raises awareness. The second one is a little bit more of a newer company, and that's Warby Parker. And Warby Parker really started with putting purpose right at the center of what they did. So Warby Parker is a company that has revolutionized how you buy eyewear online and that whole process. And they have what they call a one-for-one model. So for every pair of glasses that they sell, they work towards distributing a pair of glasses to somebody in the developing world. And eyewear is one of those things that's truly life-changing. So whether it's kind of restoring dignity to an elderly person, or even for a child, it may be the last thing that they need that can empower their education. So truly life-changing.
Yeah, and it's interesting those two examples that you gave, because what I learned from that is one of those companies was more, let's say, employee centric. They were giving back purposefully to their employees that aligned to what their overall purpose is. And then with the eyeglass company, it's kind of definitely more external. At the same time, that's similar to maybe Tom's shoes, giving a pair for a pair that's purchased, where the consumer feels like they're part of the mission as well.
Yeah, one of the things that's I think a little different from Tom's to Warby's model is Warby actually works through a nonprofit called Vision Spring, and they're all about setting up distributors and suppliers in the developing world, which I think is interesting. Instead of just donating a pair of glasses, they're actually creating the infrastructure and providing jobs and making it sustainable going forward.
Well, and I know that you really understand the for-purpose world, so to speak, because you crowdsourced, I believe, over 250 brands for the book. And what that meant is you were really looking for patterns that you saw in these for-purpose companies. I would like you, if you could, walk through some of those profiles or models that you saw. And as the audience is listening to these, I'd like you to be thinking about where your company could possibly be, like, which profile, so to speak, would be easy to transition into. It's not going to be, and the reason I really want them to think about this is a lot of our audience are very brick and mortar traditional companies that maybe have been around for a long time, and they're almost needing to reinvent themselves if they want to start becoming more for purpose. So I think it's going to take some creativity.
Sure. So as you mentioned, so in the book we studied over 250 brands, and it turns out that the brands tended to be in 8 different what we call archetypes or symbols that they embraced. So I'll very quickly go through the 8 and maybe give you a couple of examples. So the first is what we call the protector. And so that's kind of like Patagonia. They're all about protecting what's important. And so in the case of Patagonia, that's the environment. Ben and Jerry's is a company that's also in that protector category. The second archetype, and by the way, we have kind of symbols for each of the archetypes. So the symbol for the protector is Superman. And so then the next type is what we call the liberator. And the liberator is all about trying to reinvent a broken system and to try to create a better model. So our symbol for that is Moses, taking people to the promised land. And that could be brands like Netflix or Uber who have found a new way to kind of revolutionize an industry. And they're all about liberating that customer experience. The third type is the designer. And the designer is all about trying to create, revolutionary products, beautiful products. And our symbol for that is Doc Brown from the movie Back to the Future. And in that category, you think of brands like Apple and IDEO and Method Home. The fourth type is the guide. And the guide, our symbol for that is Mr. Miyagi. And the guide is all about helping people along, facilitating their individual progress. And so that could be companies like Google that helps leverage the world's information, or a group like Khan Academy. The fifth type is the guide. And, the fifth type is the advocate.
Yeah. And
the advocate is all about standing up for a particular group. And so our symbol for that is Katniss Everdeen from the Hunger Games. An example of that would be a brand like Panera. They're all about standing up for people that have what they call food insecurity. The sixth type is the challenger. And the challenger is all about inspiring people to be a better version of themselves and to transform. And so our symbol for that is Maximus from the movie Gladiator. And an example of that would be brands like Nike or Lego. The seventh type is what we call the unifier. And the unifier is all about trying to, kind of bring a community together and kind of set a standard, a new standard, and kind of blaze a trail. And so companies that are in that unifier category are people like TerraCycle, Whole Foods. The last category is what we call the master. And the master is all about improving individual lives and ultimately changing the world. And so Warby Parker is in this category, and the symbol for the master is none other than Yoda, the ultimate master.
And as you were going through those, I'm thinking, what is K-coaching? I'm trying to kind of position our own self, and I'm thinking, could you be two? Because I feel like we're a challenger, but we're also a guide.
Right. Maybe I'm the guide with a lot of the coaching and helping to facilitate that progress, right?
Yeah. So as we talk about the whole concept of the evolution and getting to that for-purpose business, it's obvious that companies need to be thinking about this to get there. I'm wondering how easy or difficult it is to make that shift. And if you could maybe tell us, what are some ways that companies today can start that transition? Are there steps that they should be taking?
Yeah, sure. I think ultimately, Krista, people have to take kind of a look in the mirror, try to really understand what their purpose is. Sometimes it's going all the way back to when the company was founded. What was the reason for being when the company was started? A lot of times that founder's story can really provide kind of the background of the why in that business. The second thing I think you can do is really try to get closer to both the customers and the employees. Get a sense of what's important to them. That certainly can be a trigger for your purpose. And third is, don't overthink this. The idea is that it's great to understand kind of, why you're in business and what your purpose is, but it's probably more important to really take action and to start to create these little things that can, kind of bring that purpose to life. And, take an agile mindset, try a lot of things to see if you can get it going.
I think it would be important for companies to not make this too difficult, perhaps at first. As you're saying, it's that little goldfish kind of philosophy, but the small things can make a big difference. I just want to share with the audience a couple examples for a moment. So we have worked with many companies that decided to connect with a nonprofit organization and share some of the profits and give that back, and in lieu of customers' spend. So for example, if someone lands a new account and part of their close process is that they let that account know for the first 90 days they'll donate a certain portion of the profits back to a charity of their choice. So that's one small little move perhaps in that direction. We also know there is a large office products company, which many on the line might know, which is a company called GiveSomethingBack.com, and that's what they do. They're giving almost 70% of their profits back to the community and back to nonprofits, which is pretty significant. Other thought I want to share with the group too is that they can connect potentially with a large industry-specific kind of nonprofit organization, but in the healthcare, which is the City of Hope. And the industry, the office products industry, has already dedicated over $155 million to the City of Hope.
Wow.
So a lot of small businesses could start embracing that through fundraising and be a part of that to give back to that organization. Anything else you might want to add in terms of what can companies do to just start doing some small things to feel as though they're being more purposeful?
Yeah, I love that, because I think in a couple of the examples you just shared there, Krista, that most companies do some type of nonprofit or give back. So I love that, of really trying to think about tying in with those organizations that really mesh well with your purpose, in ways that you might be able to not only directly with monetary be able to give to those organizations, but maybe even give like the Patagonia example, maybe even give your employees a little time to help mentor and potentially help those organizations as they move forward.
One other thought that I have as well too is a lot of them might be small local businesses in their community, and they're promoting the buy local theme, keeping business amongst small community companies, and they might talk that, but maybe there's something that they could do to be demonstrating that, perhaps more so in their community through involvement or volunteering.
Yep. Or even go out to find ways that you might be able to partner with those organizations and do something together to make it a little more meaningful than just a donation.
Yeah, that sounds great. So we're about out of time. We like to keep this to 30 minutes, so we're in pretty good shape. But I wanted to make sure that it was okay if we shared your contact information. Maybe someone on the show does want to reach out to you with questions or curiosity. And I also understand that you have a gift today that you'd like to offer our audience. So why don't you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. So real quick, if anyone wants to find more about all of the books that are in the series, the kind of umbrella site for everything is purplegoldfish.com. And so if they go to purplegoldfish.com, they can find more. Here is my gift to everyone today. So actually by midnight tonight, if you go to Amazon, you've got a link right there. But even if you go to Amazon and just type in Red Goldfish, the ebook version of the book is free today. And that's my gift back to you guys.
All right, awesome. So I hope that our folks take advantage of that and go out and get that free book. Love the concept. I'm thrilled that you were able to join us today, Stan. So adios, and thanks so much. Enjoy.
Thank you for having me, Krista.
Yeah. So for our audience, I want you to make sure you mark your calendar for the Krista Moore Talk Show. We will be live the third Wednesday of every month, moving on for the remainder of the year. And I'll be bringing you special guests and business growth ideas. And you can really find more about our upcoming shows, and you can listen to all the previous past shows at our new website that we launched just this week, which is thekristamoretalkshow.com. So take a look at the site, register, and join us for March 15th. I'm going to be interviewing Kim Angeli, and she is from the Grateful Box. She's got a terrific concept, and she talks about creating raving fans with gratitude. So I look forward to that, and you could potentially put that into part of your retention strategies. So, and at K Coaching, I thank you. We care about you, and we care about your success. We'll see you next month.